Hi guys, so today we're going to be going over Mathematics Section 2, number 21 through 40 of the ACT Practice Exam. So we're going to go ahead and start off with number 21. A 5-inch by 7-inch photograph was cut to fit exactly into a 4-inch by 6-inch frame. What is the area in square inches of the part of the photograph that was cut off? So for this question, it's a good thing to draw a picture. So here we have our big photograph, which is 5 by 7 inches. And inside that, we have our smaller photograph, which is 4 by 6 inches. So what we're looking for is the area inside of this, the area that was cut off. So what we can do here is take the area of the big photograph and subtract the area of the small photograph. So area of a rectangle equals length times width. So for the big rectangle, we have 5 times 7 equals 35. And the smaller rectangle, we have 4 times 6 equals 24. So subtract those two, you get 11, and that's going to be our answer, which is C. Correct. All right, moving on, number 22, which we can do right here. Okay, so let's talk about G, which says that BD is less than AB. What we're asking is BD always have to be shorter than AB. So here, automatically again in this first example that I drew here, BD, it's possible that it is longer than AB. So that's not true again. H says BD is less than CD. So we need to find an example where BD is greater than CD. So here again, BD is greater than CD. So we know that that is not necessarily true. J, CD is less than AB. So let's look at this. CD is less than AB. So this one's a little bit more tricky. But if we exaggerate our lines, I'm going to draw a third one here. A, C are always the endpoints. B is always somewhere in the middle. Let's put it here this time. And then D has to be in between these two. So D could go here. So in this example, CD is clearly bigger than AB. So this is not always true. So that leaves us with one option. Let's go ahead and make sure that that is our correct option. CD is less than BC. Alright, so automatically we can see that this is true because D is in between points B and C. So CD is always going to be less than the distance of BC because B is always farther than C from D, so that's going to be correct. You can look at our other examples here that's going to hold true in general. B is always farther. Alright, so the correct answer there is K. Let's go to number 23. Alright, so hopefully you can see this here. I'm going to hold it up a little bit so you can see a little bit better. So I'll go ahead and read the questions. The question: if x and y are positive integers such that the greatest common factor of x squared, y squared, and xy cubed is 45, then which of the following could equal y? 45, 15, 9, 5, or 3? So what I've done here is I've just written down the basic information. So we know that x and y are positive integers. So an integer is a whole number with no fractional parts. So they have to be a whole number, and they have to be positive. So not 0 or negative. And we also know that the greatest common factor of x squared and y squared and xy cubed is 45. And a factor is a number that can be multiplied with another number to get a final number. So the greatest common factor is 45. That means 45 and another number can be multiplied to equal another number. That's the greatest common factor. So another way to think about it is that the greatest number that you can take out of either of these two numbers is 45. So both of these numbers are divisible by 45, and that's the largest number that they're divisible by, largest whole number. Okay, so let's think about this problem. Let's start off with making a little factor tree. So we know that, actually let's not do that. Let's start off, let's look at these, what this gives you. X squared, y squared, and xy cubed. Okay, so looking at this entire problem, it's a little bit alarming. I was confused when I saw this problem. Don't be freaked out. If you get this one wrong, not a big deal. This is one of the harder problems on the test. But we can logic our way through this. So if we think about what a factor is, if you have a number that is factorable, you can always divide it. So let's see, are there any common factors in between these two things that we can take out? So there's an x in both, and there's a y squared in both. So let's factor out x squared y, or xy squared, excuse me. So x y squared times x gives you x squared y squared, and x y squared times y gives you xy cubed. So that's the greatest common factor of these two numbers is equal to xy squared. So because we know the greatest common factor is equal to 45, we can say that this is equal to 45. All right, so now we're looking for two numbers, x times y that will be equal to 45. So let's think about what we can multiply to get 45 in the first place. So let's make a little factor tree. We can multiply 1 and 45. We can multiply 3 times 15. We can multiply 5 times 9. And that's it. So we know that one of these numbers has to be a square. So the only square that we have here is 9. And the square root of 9 happens to be 3, which is also on our factor tree. So y is going to have to equal 3, because that's the only possible number that can get us to our 45. So I know that's a little bit complicated, but it is doable to solve if you just slow down, think about the question, think about any hints that the question may be giving you, for example, that it's a factor, and then logic your way through there. Alright guys, so let's talk about number 24. I'm going to go ahead and read it. To test a new medicine, each of 300 volunteers was assigned a distinct number from 1 to 300. Next, a calculator was used to simulate drawing 150 balls from among 300 congruent balls. The balls were numbered the same way as the volunteers so that 150 volunteers to receive the new medication would be chosen without bias. The other volunteers received a placebo. Weeks later, the two groups were compared. Which of the following phrases best describes the company's testing? So this question is more about math knowledge in general. It's not really any calculations at all. So let's go over some definitions that will help you with this question. I actually didn't know the answer to this question myself, so this is an example of when it's good to learn these types of definitions for this test because they will come in handy. So randomized means without biased. So because this question specifically mentioned that it is a randomized test, we know that our answer is either going to be F, G, or J. You can cross out G and K. Alright, next, an experiment is when the results from a control group, in this case the group that received the placebo, and an experimental group, which in this case received the medication, are compared. So in this case, since we have a control group and a experimental group, we know that it is an experiment. So that leaves us with only G. So we already know from that that G is going to be our answer. But let's go ahead and just clarify what these other terms mean. So a census is a survey of a population that does not involve actively testing a variable or running a trial. So this is not like something like a medical trial. If you're familiar with the U.S. Census, it's when everyone in the country fills out some basic information about themselves, and everyone answers the same questions, and then you can tell data from that. It's not giving some people a medication and seeing how they react to it. It's something that you're testing the entire population about things that already exist. And then lastly, a sample survey is a test in which all volunteers receive the same survey or test, but there's no control or treatment group. So for example, if you gave everyone the same medication and then saw what happened, that would be a sample survey, because you're still introducing a variable, but you don't have anything that you're controlling. So our answer there, again, is G. All right, let's move on to number 25. Okay, I'll go ahead and read it. One caution sign flashes every 4 seconds, and another caution sign flashes every 10 seconds. At a certain instant, the 2 signs flash at the same time. How many seconds elapse until the 2 signs next flash at the same time? Our options are 6, 7, 14, 20, and 40. So this question is really asking about least common multiples. It's asking at what times will both of these flash at the same time. So we're looking for a number that has the factors of both 4 and 10. The definition of a least common multiple is a least common multiple of some numbers is the smallest number that the numbers are factors of. So the most simple way to do this is just to list out multiples of both numbers. So let's start with 10 because it's bigger. So we have 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. Okay, so let's start with that, and now we want to do multiples of 4, and we want to see where both lists have numbers in common. So we have 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, there's one in common. 24, 28, 32, 36, and 40, there's a second one in common. So right here is our least common multiple. So we know that the lights are going to flash together every 20 seconds. So every 20 seconds they're going to have a flash in common. So if we go back to our question says at a certain instance the 2 lights flash at the same time. So we could say that's 20 seconds. First flash. And then the next time that they would flash would be at 40 seconds. That is if we are starting time at 0, which we don't know. But all we need to know is the length of time between the 2 flashes, which is 40 minus 20 is 20 seconds. And as you may notice, that is equal to our least common multiple because every number is going to be a multiple here. So we could have stopped once we figured our number is 20, but if you wanted to be extra cautious, that's a way to make sure. All right, number 26. I'm going to go ahead and read it. So, for all non-zero values, a and b, the value of which of the following expressions is always negative? Hey. The value of which of the following expressions is always negative? Okay, so again we have this word here, always. So that indicates that something has to be true in every single scenario. So whenever there's a word like this, I usually do, I try to look for counter examples. So what do we know? We know that A and B are always non-zero. A and B are non-zero. Okay, so we're looking for non-zero numbers A and B. Which expression is always negative? So let's look for expressions that could be positive, because that's how we would disprove it. So here we have A minus B. Let's call this F. A minus B. So you could get a positive number simply if A equals 3 and B equals 2. 3 minus 2 equals 1. So you got a positive number. That means this option cannot be true. Okay. G. Negative A minus B. Can we think of another example? Yes, if A equals negative 1 and B equals negative 2, you get negative or minus negative 1 minus negative 2. So that equals minus a negative gives you a positive, so that equals 1 plus 2 equals 3. That's positive again, so G is out. H, absolute value of A plus absolute value of B. Absolute value is always positive, so that can never be negative. We know that's wrong. J, absolute value of A minus the absolute value of B. So here we do have subtraction of a positive number because of the absolute value. But if this number is bigger than this, then it's not going to work. For example, if A equals 6 and B equals 2, we're going to have the absolute value of 6 minus the absolute value of 2, which is only 6 minus 2, which is equal to 4. That's positive. Nope. So now let's make sure that K, which is our only answer left, is going to be correct. So K, you have negative A minus absolute value of B. So because these are both in absolute values, the numbers, with when you take the absolute value, that'll always be positive. So you're going to have negative of a positive number minus a positive number. So you're going to have basically a negative number minus another number, which is always going to be negative. So for example, if we have negative 2 and 1, it's going to be negative absolute value of negative 2 minus 1, which is equal to negative 2 minus 1 equals negative 3. If we choose 2 and 3, you get negative absolute value of 2 minus absolute value of 3, which is equal to negative 2 minus 3 equals negative 5. No matter what you plug in here, it's going to be negative. So K is going to be our answer.